when we begin to look at the ratios and the proportions and the numbers that emerge from the study of sacred geometry, what we realize is that those numbers, those proportions and ratios that give us the division of space also are giving us the division of time. You've got 12 faces. Each of them are pentagons, right? And so each pentagon consists of 5 corners, and the angle between successive pairs of edges is 108 degrees. Now, 108 degrees is as you guys know, is one of the fundamental numbers of the whole system. You know, the cosmological numbers that emerge from these geometric relationships. We find them at the core of the Sumerian king lists. We find them at the core of the Vedas, the ancient Vedic tradition. We find them preserved in Egyptian architecture. We find the same numbers over here in monumental earthwork architecture of whoever these, not Pueblan, but whoever these people were of the eastern woodlands who built these amazing earthwork structures 1,000 to 3,000, 4,000 years ago in America, were versed in the same geometry and used the same numbers. And of course, all of this is stuff we're going to be exploring in future episodes of the podcast. But going back to the dodecahedron, you've got 12 faces, right? Now, each face consists of a pentagon with 108 at each corner. So that means 108 times 5 gives you the total number of degrees that measures the pentagon, right? What's 108 times 5? Well, it's 540 degrees. Now, if you want to, everybody listening to this, you can I know you've got your calculators right handy. You can pick up your calculator like this, and you can go 540, and then you can go times 12. There we are, times 12 equals 6,480. Look at there, Laura. There we go, Laura. Look at there. 6,480. So that verifies it. So what's that number? Well, we go that times 4, and we get this number. And that number is the number of years traditionally in one precessional cycle, which is traditionally the Earth's axis doing this over a period of 50 arc seconds per year, 1 degree every 72 years, or 1 degree every human lifespan. And it takes then 72 times 360, or 25,920 years. Now, that's the traditional number. The real number may be deviating from that traditional number, the idealized number, somewhat. It probably does. And in fact, because of the fact that the precessional cycle, as now measured, is moving at slightly more than 50 arc seconds per year, that means that the total duration of the great year or precessional cycle is going to be somewhat less than 25,920. However, I don't think anybody's going to claim with 100% certainty that the modern rate of precession is constant throughout the entire cycle. See, it could be that is, just like, because in all elliptical orbits, we know that as the orbiting object is approaching one of the foci, it accelerates. And so we know that the velocity around an elliptical orbit is inconstant. So we don't know. But the number 25,920 is actually closer to the real number than the round number that's typically given in textbooks, which is 26,000 years. So I like the number 25,920. And if we think of that as a representative of this great year cycle, right, during which, there's a whole revolution of, just like in the annual cycle, particularly if you live in the more temperate latitudes, it can be a pretty profound change from, at one point to 6 months later, right? I mean, think of, from July to or figure from, say, even from June to December, right? Or July to January, can be pretty distinct change, right? So you have this annual revolution, this annual turnover of the natural order, which is cyclical, which is regular, our entire basis of our agricultural system, our economic system, our social system is embedded completely in that annual cycle. Now, so less than it used to be, but just a couple of generations ago, it was completely controlled by that natural cycle, the day-night cycle. I mean, look, people used to go to bed as soon as the sun went down because they didn't have lights, 100 years ago. So my point is that we've got these cycles, and in the traditional model, in the archaic mind, what they were looking at was this resonance between the small and the large, between the small and the great, right? Because they understood that something we've been talking about throughout this podcast, which is the idea of scale and variance. So that in geology, we all know scale and variance, which is that, you look at the small scale and it can be very corresponding to the large scale. And unless you have some scaling factor in there, you could look at an outcrop and go, is that outcrop 3 feet high or 1,000 feet high? So you put something in there for scale because so many phenomena within the geological realm is scale invariant. So we find that same principle. We present that and teach that principle in sacred geometry, the scale invariant nature of these patterns. Well, in the archaic mind, the cyclical repetitions were also scale invariant, so that there were cycles within cycles. Ezekiel's metaphor of wheels within wheels, I think, is applicable here.